Story 1. It started with footsteps. I live alone in a small house on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, just 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a dusty attic I never used. I'd been living there for a little over a year, and everything had always been quiet. Until one night, I was lying in bed and heard it. Thump. Thump. Footsteps. Slow and heavy, coming from above me. I froze. It was almost midnight. The TV was off. No cars outside. I laid there, heart pounding, listening. Thump. Thump. They stopped. I sat up and stared at the ceiling. My first thought was raccoons. Maybe something had gotten in through a broken vent. So I got up, grabbed the flashlight from the drawer, and pulled down the attic ladder. I climbed up slowly, shining the light around. Nothing. Just old boxes and dust. I went back to bed, thinking maybe I imagined it. But the next night, it happened again. Same time. Same slow steps. I called my friend Dan, who's good with tools, and asked him to check the attic with me the next day. We looked everywhere. No signs of animals. No holes, no droppings, nothing. Maybe the wood's just settling, Dan said. But wood doesn't walk. A week passed. The footsteps came back every night, same time. I stopped sleeping. I even left a camera up there, but it didn't catch anything. Just static and silence. Then one night, the footsteps didn't stop. They moved, from one side of the attic to the other. Then back again. Back and forth. Like someone pacing. I stood under the attic door, staring up. And then, I heard something that made my skin crawl. A whisper. Faint, but real. A woman's voice. I couldn't make out the words, but it was there, right above me. I called the police. When the officer came, we checked everything again. Still nothing. But he looked uneasy. "You live here alone?" he asked. "Yeah." "Why?" He hesitated. "This house. The last owner, she died in her sleep. In that room." I didn't know what to say. I stayed at Dan's place that night. When I returned the next day, the attic ladder was down. I moved out 2 days later. Story 2. It was a cold Friday night. I was driving back from my brother's house, about an hour out in the country. We'd had dinner, watched a game, and I stayed later than I planned. It was close to midnight when I hit the long stretch of empty road leading home. No streetlights. No other cars. Just dark trees and my headlights. That's when I saw him. A man was standing by the side of the road. He was tall, wearing a dark coat, and just standing there, facing the road with his hands by his sides. He wasn't waving or anything, just still. I slowed down, wondering if he needed help. But something about him made me uneasy. His head was tilted slightly, like he was watching me as I passed. I didn't stop. I kept driving. A minute later, I looked in the rearview mirror, and he was gone. Not walking. Not in the distance. Just gone. I told myself maybe he walked back into the woods or something. But I kept thinking about him. That blank stare. The way he didn't move. It stuck with me. I got home and tried to forget it. The next day, I told my roommate, Jason, about it. He laughed it off. Probably some weirdo waiting for a ride. Happens all the time, he said. but I couldn't shake the feeling. A few nights later, I stayed late at work. It was close to 11 when I pulled into our parking lot. Our apartment building has a small lot out back with only a few lights. I parked and grabbed my stuff. As I turned toward the stairs, I froze. Someone was standing at the far edge of the lot, near the trees. My blood ran cold. It was him. Same coat. Same height. Same stillness. Just standing there, halfway in the shadows, watching me. I didn't move. Neither did he. I backed toward the door slowly, never turning my back. Once inside, I locked it behind me and ran upstairs to our apartment. Jason was on the couch, headphones in. I told him what happened. "Dude, that's creepy," he said. "Are you sure it was the same guy?" "I know it was," I said. We looked outside, but the lot was empty again. After that, I didn't see him for a while. A week passed. Then another. I started to think maybe I imagined it, or maybe it was someone else. Until one night, I woke up around 2 a.m. and felt like someone was watching me. I sat up in bed and looked toward the window. He was standing on the sidewalk across the street. Not moving. Just staring up at my window. This time, I grabbed my phone and took a picture. The flash lit up the street, and he turned, fast, and walked away. I called the police. An officer came, but by the time he got there, the man was gone. I showed him the picture. You could barely see the guy, it was grainy, but the officer nodded. "We've had a few calls about someone matching this description," he said. "Usually just standing around. Haven't caught him yet." Jason and I added locks to all the windows. I kept a baseball bat by my bed. A few nights later, Jason wasn't home. I was alone. Around 1:30 a.m., I heard footsteps on the stairs outside. Then, a soft knock on the door. I held my breath and looked through the peephole. It was him. Closer than ever. Right at my door. I didn't open it. I backed away and called the police again. As I was on the phone, I heard something that sounded like metal scraping. Then silence. When the cops showed up, he was gone again. But this time, he left something behind. They found a small knife wedged in the doorframe. As if he'd been trying to pry it open. The officer looked at me seriously. "You need to stay somewhere else for a while." I stayed with my brother after that. Jason moved out a month later. I never saw the man again. But sometimes, when I drive late at night, I still look for him on the side of the road. And I wonder what would have happened if I'd opened the door. Story 3. I used to work the night shift at an office building downtown. It was one of those old places built in the 1950s, with flickering lights and dusty carpets. My job was simple, just watch the front desk, answer any calls, and make sure no one wandered in after hours. There were 5 floors, but at night, no one was supposed to be above the second. Most of the lights were off. The building got quiet after 9 p.m., almost too quiet. You could hear every creak, every hum of the vents, every footstep, if there were any. The first few weeks were uneventful. I'd read, scroll through my phone, maybe watch a show with headphones in. But then one night, my supervisor, Mike, gave me a warning before he left. "Hey," he said, pointing toward the elevator. "Don't mess with the door at the end of the 5th floor. It's locked for a reason." I laughed. "Why? What's behind it?" "Just storage," he said quickly. "Old records and junk. But some weird stuff has happened up there." Lights turning on. Things moved around. It's probably rats or bad wiring, but still. Don't go up there. I nodded and promised I wouldn't. But of course, after he left, I couldn't stop thinking about it. That night, around 2 a.m., I noticed something strange. The elevator pinged. I looked up from my book, confused. No one had pressed the button. I checked the camera feed. The elevator had gone up to the 5th floor. I stared at the screen. No one had entered the building. I was sure of it. The next night, the same thing happened. This time, I watched closely. Around 2 a.m., the elevator doors opened on the 5th floor. And then closed again. The hallway light flickered on right before the doors opened, as if someone had walked by. I told Mike the next day. He looked tired and didn't say much. Just told me again not to go up there. The following night, the elevator dinged early. It went straight to the 5th floor without stopping. I stared at the feed. Something moved. Just for a second, a shadow. It crossed in front of the camera and vanished. I took the stairs and climbed up. The door Mike warned me about was slightly open. The lock hung loose. Inside was dark. My flashlight lit up shelves, boxes, and a chair in the middle of the room. On it sat a tape recorder. I pressed play. Static. Then a hoarse whisper, "She's still here. Don't let her out." I dropped it and ran. Mike said the door had been locked. He didn't understand how it opened. I quit that job. But sometimes, when I walk by that building, I see the light on the 5th floor flicker on. Story 4. This happened about 4 years ago, when I lived alone in a small apartment above a hardware store. It wasn't fancy, but it was cheap. The apartment came with a landline phone I never used. I never gave the number to anyone. But one night, around 2:30 in the morning, it rang. Once. Just a single, loud brarring. I sat up in bed, confused. I picked it up. Silence. I unplugged it. The next night, it rang again. Still unplugged. I was scared now. I replaced the phone with a new one. It worked. That night, at exactly 2:30 a.m., it rang again. Once. I picked up. A faint click. Then soft breathing. I hung up. The phone company said there were no calls on record. My neighbor, Beth, told me the last guy who lived there died in a fire. They said he was calling 911 but never spoke, she said. Just held the phone. And burned. That night, the phone rang again. And I saw a handprint on the window. From inside. It came back every night. Phone. Handprint. Same time. I moved out. But months later, my cell rang once. No number. And the screen said, home.